Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Friday, June 6th, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Beginning today, as we always do with our news, it's an easy one. Today at 8:30 Eastern Time, we get the BLS's non-farm payroll reports. We also are getting the Canadian employment situation, less of a big deal, obviously. Excuse me. That's the big deal we have today. We also have at 9, we have an ECB speaker and Bowman speaking at 10. Those will obviously be of less impact. Let's move on to our charts. Okay, here's our full session chart of the S&P 500 daily bars. And we won't spend a lot of time here because we've kind of told this story a whole bunch. The key here is we're in this area of balance, which is right around here. The way that I'm interpreting this is a 58.21 bid. That is our composite VPOC in this area. And there appears to be a 6,000 offer. So we're 58.21 bid at 6,000 offer, and it's really a 59.50 trade where it's really easy to buy or sell these prices. Kind of harder to buy those prices, harder to sell these prices, but you can do whatever you want in here. And what we're curious to know is, are we going to tip one way or the other today? What we've seen recently on this daily chart, we seem to really be rejecting any attempts to settle above 6,000. We put in this sort of tail. It was a very tight day 2 days ago, very small range. And then yesterday we tested above and reverted below. So for me today, that seems to be telling us that we're not done kind of trading what prices need to be traded down here. But this number could change everything depending on how it comes out and how it affects the sentiment of participants. That being said, just looking at this chart, what's the most important thing that I can gather from this? So far, it's that I would give better odds to taking the low. We haven't done it yet, but as of right now, I would give better odds to taking the low just based on the rejection of higher prices. But as noted, it could change very quickly. Let's move on to another chart. Here we're seeing our market profile chart of the last several days. This is RTH only. Within that area that I just talked about, we had this smaller balance area. This one is where it tightened up a little bit. We see it kind of going 58.75 bid with a 59.50 offer. And we talked a lot about this balance area and the value movement in here and the odds of taking this low, which we saw, and then the reversion higher. I've used these single prints a lot to plan. When we started to move higher, we left single prints here, and they were key for our plans. One of the big ideas we had yesterday was if we fail to hold or fail to take this high or hold above, potential for reversion lower to take the single prints, and that's what we got. Moved through these ones fairly cleanly, then reverted higher again and moved down to test these, but left a little bit of singles left. Other things to notice on this chart that we're looking at right now, just the open, value moving higher through this area. Then right here, we opened here, checked all these prices, and the verdict of this day was prices should be lower, and we settled right here. So for me, that adds a lot to why I have, just based on the technical perspective here, which does not account for the news bomb that we might get. The technical perspective tells me that that I'm giving better odds to taking the low. What's something that is that I could say that another point to that? Well, we have a small excess here, so it does show that there are plenty of people still willing to buy the supply that is available down here. Let's move on to a smaller time frame chart and plan more specifically. Okay, here we are on our intraday chart. This is a 30-minute chart. Let's go over, and as I said, I'm giving a little bit better odds to taking the low today, just based on how we seem to have refuted the upside on this test higher, push lower. We opened right at the lows for the overnight session and have pushed higher. Notice the overnight profile, building value and a distribution right here with a key LVN above the prior week's high. So, and we have here, this is the developing weeks profile, developing weeks VPOC right here. So let's go over from a technical perspective, what are the, how could this go, bearish or bullish here? Well, the thing is, we have a key LVN and the prior week's high right here, and then we have our developing week's high right here. So this area is just kind of a decision zone. And, if it's this area, so this is our decision zone. If we should push and hold below the prior week's high and start to see participation increase, then obviously our key target would be the singles, yesterday's low, and potentially this 59.16 prior month's VPOC. So just from, just very basically kind of looking at things, if we lose this area, which is basically the prior week's high, if we lose this area and we fall into mid-century and sellers keep working, key targets are singles and the 59.16 MCV-POC. If we start to lose that area, which I think is less likely today, but definitely possible, I would be going zone to zone with my next key target being these 59.90s, which would be one vol-sig down. Below this area, I would be going just zone to zone. Understand that we could move quite a bit if this number is out of line and if a lot of participants have to move. But this is the area, really, these 58.90s, where if we start to lose this, that's kind of like losing all hope for the buyers. Conversely, let's talk about what happens if we rally. How can it look if we rally? Well, we have a really weak low here. But it happened because there's a lot of people that want to buy these prices. What I just discussed, if we get sold, that means all these people would have to be wrong. But if they're right, how could that look? Well, any type of a push into the prior week's range, into this key LVN, that eventually finds support and gets back above, to me, there would be a pretty high percentage chance that we move up to test this prior week's VPOC, which would be our next decision zone. I didn't really go over it, but we should all be aware that there is a chance that we could test above and revert below to ignite that bearish situation I just talked about. We all know that, though. But anyway, just moving on to the bullish idea. If we find ourselves today holding above or testing below the prior week's high and finding support, getting back above, this 58.50 developing weekly VPOC is a clear target and decision zone, because if we find that we can just motor through this area and hold it bid, that means anyone that's sold in here is likely to start thinking they're wrong. And this high and this zone, the 6,014 area, starts to become vulnerable if we can move through these 6,000s. So basically, on the bullish side, if we see ourselves test below the prior week's high and at some point find buyers, then we're looking for a test of the prior week's VPOC. If the prior week's VPOC is the developing week's VPOC, if that's accepted, we're looking for tests of millennium. If millennium is accepted, then we're looking for this zone, the 68.14 high. Moving through this, we know we have a lot of targets we've talked about a lot. The key one is the 61.30s, and above that, the 61.44s to the 60.44s to 60.50s are the next target up. I think that's about what we have to talk about today. Being non-farm, we really just want to be aware of the targets and less, focus less on the path, because it could change quite a bit depending on the data. But we'll just go over one more time our key areas here. Key area is overnight low and yesterday's low, which appears weak. That's an area that I would look to be tested if there's any bearish action. If we should break and run below this area, then we're looking for 16s. Maybe a stop at the O's, and then the 90s are the big decision zone for me below this area that could really start to see the market trend, or maybe see us revert into chop. Moving above our big decision area, the initial one is the developing week's VPOC here at 59.80. Above this, the next key area is obviously millennium. A test higher to millennium is where things could really start to fall apart on like a test higher on the number. But if we hit millennium and then we hold these 58.80s and can work higher, then we're obviously going to look for the 60.14s, which is key. If 60.14s are accepted, it means everybody here that sold it is wrong, and then we would be looking for the target I've been talking about for a long time, 60.30s. If those go, we'll be open to the 60.44 to 60.50s. That's what I got for you. I'm going to end it here a little shorter because it is non-farm, and today it could be a lot more random. and I'm sure many of you want to prepare. So we'll cut it off here. Hopefully this kind of gives you a heads up to the areas that I'm looking at today. I hope you're having a great morning. I hope your great morning continues. And most of all, I hope that you find some way to improve your trading today that is not dependent upon your P&L. Any questions on any of this, please feel free to ask me in the chat room. Let's get out there and clock those ticks. Ciao.